Hey guys, Stealth here and welcome back to Stealth and So Cards. In case you don't know what the So Cards are, they're a pack of cards. There's 52 of them, and these are not just usual play cards or anything like that. No, they have questions which are designed to spark deeper conversations. They ask questions of you and potentially your friends who you're playing this with, and making it, or driving conversations apart where it might not normally go. It sparks very deep and personal conversations. Not everybody's going to be comfortable with that. I run an event locally in the area of Rotterdam where I have a bunch of, well, I suppose you could call them random strangers. It's a meetup group that I run. It's called Introverts in Rotterdam. And we use these cards to just spark deep conversations. It's called Skip the Small Talk, and that's exactly the point of these things. You just skip everything and you go directly to deep and interesting conversations. Today's question is, if you were to give a tour of your hometown, what would be the highlights? Now, as I mentioned quite a few times on my channel, I live in the area of Rotterdam, which is on the southwest side of the Netherlands. Not southwest, so it's not the whole Zeeland thing, which is part of the country which was pretty much conquered on the sea, as we like to say it. It's slightly above that, and it's a town called Hellevoetsluis. Yes, I live in hell, I suppose you could say. Hellevoetsluis used to be a very important city navy-wise. It had a very sustainable or very large part of the Dutch Navy in it. Especially back in the day of the 80-Year War, which is a very long war. I'm not sure if it's exactly 80 years, but something in that ballpark. Around 1800s, where the Dutch used to fight the British. Back in the day, I think we were called the Seven Provinces, not so much the Netherlands just yet. That was, well, around about that time period. And from what I've been told, there used to be about 80 to 100 warships stationed in this part. And one of the highlights, if I were to ever give a tour of my hometown, would be that you can still see quite a few remnants of Hellevoetsluis being a naval town, or a reinforced port, I suppose you could call it. Because we have a sort of a, I suppose you could call it a Fortress Light version, where we have some defensive works. There used to be guns, but I'm not sure what sort of caliber. I think somewhere in the range of 4 to 6 pounders, something along the lines of those. I'd have to look that up. So if I were to take you on a tour of my hometown, I would have you see part of the defensive works and, very importantly, the dry dock. Because we have a dry dock, and it is still in operation. It's, I think, at this point, well over 200 years old, but it still works. And I went into that dry dock a couple of years ago, and you can take a tour. And a dry dock, as you might imagine, is basically a big basin, but in the walls of that basin, there's a complete structure. There's stairways, there's crawlways, there's whatever you can do to get to the side of a warship, or the undercarriage, rather. The underside, not the undercarriage. We got a tour about that, and you can still see that it's the old masonry that's still in there. It's the old building technology that they were used. But after 200 years, it still stands, it still works. Even the door still works, although I suppose they have renovated that thing quite a few times. And we even have a couple of old warships stationed. They're museum ships. We have an old minesweeper over here. And a, I think it's called a ram ship. It's a steel ship. I'm not exactly sure if it's designed to ram stuff, but it has a very, very large and stubby turret onto it. I think it's a dual turret, and, well, with the length of the barrel, it's not very going to hit anything accurately. But if you get hit by one of those, well, that's going to make a hell of a dent. Those would be the highlights for a tour in my town. The dry dock, part of the fortress, and those ships. Because I think that by far that is the most interesting part of town, most interesting part of the history of my town. So what's yours? Let me know down below in the comments. What would I need to see if I ever came to visit your hometown? What's interesting? and your first thought might be, nothing. It's normal. You live there. It's going to take a bit of work mentally to figure out what is interesting in your hometown. So give it a bit of time. Pretend that you're coming to your hometown for the first time. And what is interesting there? What would you want to see, or what would you show to family, friends, strangers, whatever? Let me know down below in the comments. And I shall see you next week for more Stealth and So Cards.